Alice Cooper's Constrctor from 1986. Now, what's to say about this album? I've given it many listens over the years, over the decades. It's quite enjoyable. It's one of Alice's albums that often gets forgotten. It came out in September of 1986. It was a turning point in Alice Cooper's career. He was just coming off the Dada album, which was quite a strange, really weird sort of an album. And again, Alice was going through a few problems of his own at the time, so that was reflected greatly in those albums that he did in the early 80s. By the mid-80s, Alice had hooked up with a few talented musicians, one being Kip Winger and the other being Mr. Kane Roberts, who also had a striking appearance on stage to a guitar-wielding Rambo. Those of you may remember his guitar looking a lot like a machine gun. And since that time between Dada and Constrctor, I think Alice was out of the spotlight for about 2 or 3 years. He made an appearance with Twisted Sister in Be Cruel to Your School, which is a fun song. Check it out if you get the chance. The album itself runs about 40 minutes or so. It had 2 singles. It also has a song on it from the soundtrack to one of the Friday the 13th movies. I believe it was Jason Lives. The Man Behind the Mask. Nice song. Seem to relate to that song a little bit. Not sure why. There's another song on the album, The Great American Success Story. It seems very reminiscent of the 1986-1987 film Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield. You listen to the lyrics and it almost sounds like it belongs in that movie. So who knows? Maybe that song was slated to be released on that film but never quite made it there. Don't know what the story is with that. Now, of the 10 tracks that are on the album, I think one of the most powerful songs of the album is Simple Disobedience, track number 5. And there's just something about the intro, it really thunders home. People seem to forget that song. Nobody ever mentions it. Teenage Frankenstein, that's a fun song. When that was done in concert at the time, they had this Frankenstein sort of robot on stage, and it was a very tricky sort of special effect. The Nightmare Returns DVD features it. Life and the Death of the Party, that's a fun song. Again, something about that, the vibe to the song.
Man, oh man, come down here and spend all my life cleaning up after these kids. It makes me, hey, a dollar bill, how about that? Man, that's great. See, sometimes a fake dollar bill is only a fine, man. What's this? Alice Cooper, Constrctor. Man, oh man, this guy is really disgusting. This guy is really sick. And so are you.
So as always, we had Alice Cooper on vocals. The massive and massively talented Kane Roberts played guitars, keyboards, bass, background vocals, and apparently, according to the sleeve, drums. Something that I wasn't aware of before this review. Seeing as that's the case, I'd be interested to see a drum-off between Kane Roberts and Bobby Rock. Big dudes beating the shit out of drums. David Rosenberg on the drums. Also, I believe a drum machine was used heavily in this album. Something that kind of detracted for me. After years of listening to the album and then to find out there was a drum machine involved. Again, with a lot of albums I've been finding out lately. That was a drum machine? Kip Winger, of course, who went on to fame on his own with Winger playing bass. Again, another massive talent right there. It was a very heavy hitting album. A lot of big names, big people, no pun intended, involved in the making of this album. So you can really hear it. Sad that it's an album that gets forgotten a lot by Alice Cooper fans and the like. Overall, a very fun Alice Cooper album, very 1980s. I mean, it doesn't have this 70s vibe that Alice's earlier albums had, but this comes into its own game, and this is its own animal. Again, this, which was followed by Raise Your Fist and Yell, 2 equally awesome albums, and again, more or less the same lineup of people. Your main heavy hitters being Kane Roberts and Kip Winger. Kane Roberts, he disappeared for quite a while. Towards the end of the second collaboration, that one being Raise Your Fist and Yell, Alice encouraged Kip Winger and Kane Roberts to go and pursue their own careers, of which they did. Kip Winger came out successful as he did. Kane Roberts also, 2 or 3 solo albums, one being a self-titled solo album, the second one being Saints and Sinners, an all-time AOR classic. We'll review that album at another time because just don't have the time right now. But yeah, and then after that, Phoenix Down by Kane Roberts, again another, that was much later, great album. Then Kane sort of just disappeared. He disappeared for quite a while. Being a graphic designer, I guess he started focusing mostly on his more artistic sort of stuff, which is great. Great artist as well. Great artist as in drawings, comics, things of that nature. No doubt about it. Talented individuals on this album. Check it out. I wasn't disappointed. Funny story about when I first purchased this album. Funny how you can get little stories that go along with the times that you were listening to albums or the time you bought an album. And it was the first time that I got a parking ticket. Parked right next to an all-day parking spot, and yet mine was a 4-hour parking spot. Got fined, whatever, chew myself up, get myself an album. And bang, this was the one. Sure enough, been listening to it ever since. Never done me wrong. Yeah, definitely one of Alice Cooper's highlights of the 80s. Check it out.